Hi, I'm Chuck Mills. I'm the EUC Practice Director at Gantech. My Twitter is vchuckmills, vExpert, former member of VCC Council, and I'm here today to talk about one of the VMware suite components, Mirage. So Mirage is normally used for backup, it's recovery, image management, but we at Gantech have a special use case I'd like to tell you about today. We're actually using Mirage to convert an environment from Novell to AD. So the operating systems that they currently have in their environment is XP, Windows 7 32-bit, and Windows 64-bit. They're stretched across 4 different locations, so there is some of the wide area networking components that we had to deal with. About 400 PCs, if I didn't mention that. And so the very first step we had to figure out was how do we deploy a Mirage client, especially in a non-Active Directory environment. Having XP out there were no PowerShell extensions, therefore we couldn't use PowerShell. So we used basic batch scripting to do this. So what we did is we used PS exec. We wrote a batch file that basically, so how do you deploy the client? First thing in XP, you need to make sure that you have .NET 3.5 on there. So how do you know if it's out there? We wrote a script, we looked for the directory. If it didn't find the directory, it would go ahead and install the .NET and then install the Mirage client, 32-bit of course. So then we had to do it for Windows 7. And again, we had to come up just using a batch file. How do you tell when you have a 64-bit machine versus a 32-bit machine? So again, we thought about it. If you look for the programs data x86 folder, that tells you that you're running with a 64-bit environment. Therefore, we went through the same process of loading the client. It would look for that particular directory. If it found it, it knew it had to do a 64-bit client. If not, we went ahead and installed a 32-bit client. So that worked out pretty well. I'd say we had about a 82% hit rate, success rate on that. We found issues with the firewall. Also, you know, in this current age, just turn your machines off at night. So we ran into situations where machines were off. But once we rectified the firewall issue and had the machine stay on during the evening, everything seemed to be right. So we got about a 93–95% success rate with the rest of the clients being installed manually. So that worked out pretty well, but it's something to think about. So as you're doing a Mirage a deployment is how do we get the client out there? If you have an Active Directory environment, it's not that difficult. If you already have application delivery mechanisms, it makes it a lot easier. But if you walk into a situation, it's one of those things that you want to assess that environment and figure out how am I going to get this step 1, which is to get the client out to the endpoints. So at that point, we just went ahead and we centralized the endpoints. Again, very good success rate. Did not take a tremendous amount of time. So of course your outlying areas and your wide area network connections took a little more time. But again, within a matter of a week or so, we had all the endpoints centralized. So here's where it gets really interesting and where we kind of use Mirage a little bit outside of the box. So they had 3 operating systems, as I said, XP, Windows 32-bit, Windows 7 32-bit, Windows 7 64-bit. What we did is we created 3 base layers for each one of those operating systems. And that was the only thing that was on there was the operating system. Then we deployed those based on collections. So within Mirage, you create a collection and you can create that statically or dynamically. So we just sorted by the operating system that was centralized, created 3 collections for the 3 operating systems. At that point, we deployed the operating system only based on the collection, slid it in underneath of all the installed applications that were already out there, all the user data that was already out there, and we slid that out. Now, the nice thing about that also is that I would say 80–90% had remote access turned on. It gave us an opportunity to configure those operating systems in such a way that we had better control of the endpoints. But again, the really nice thing to understand here is we pushed this out underneath all the existing data and applications that were out there. So That gave us the ability not only to control those endpoints with the additional features that we put on there, but now we had some control over the image. Everyone had the same amount of images. So issues that came out there, again, is deployment speed, people leaving their machines on, the outlying areas take a little more time. And what you got to be careful is when you set up a Mirage solution to make sure that you don't oversell the fact that this can reach all your endpoints and that it's going to be fast. Part of what Mirage wants to do is it wants to make sure it does not affect the end user. Therefore, when the user is using the machines, it's going to be a lot slower to deploy. That is how it works. And then when you're trying to do a mass deployment, you're fighting against the nature of Mirage. So make sure that that expectation is set that this isn't going to be deployed and then shot out there as some of the other products would do when you have full control over the machines. Another odd issue that we saw, and I don't have an explanation yet, is that the fact that the association of Word files reverted back to WordPad, so it was just a quick fix for about, I'd say, 10% of the environment. So for whatever reason that happened, some minor changes here and there, but for the most part, just sliding that operating system underneath all those machines worked out really, really well. So then the next step is to take GroupWise and the Novell client, and we created app layers of, and let's take the Novell client. So we took the Novell client and created an app layer. You can then take that app layer, push it out to the endpoint, okay, and now you have a base layer and an app layer on top of it. If you unassign that app layer, it actually removes the Novell client. We did the same thing with GroupWise. So now, as we move further in our migration, and as we get finished with the Novell product, we can then unassign those app layers and actually remove both GroupWise and the client. We did some small group testings. We found out that we needed some scripting to join the Active Directory environment and things like that. And again, using an app layer. So basically, an app layer scans. You take a clean machine, the operating system, very clean in this case. It scans that operating system. You would apply anything that you need to do. So that includes scripting. So all we did a pre-scan. We added whatever scripting and bat files that we needed to the location defined by Mirage. Then we did a post-scan, and then we did an app layer deployment out to the endpoints. Those scripts are now on all those endpoints. So that gave us the capability to do things like join the domain and some other cleanups and some other things that we needed to do. You do that in small test groups. You want to make sure that it's going to work for each of the operating system versions and things like that. But we found out that it was extremely successful. So I'd like to tell you the end of the story. We're in the process of doing that. We've tested some groups. Everything has worked out fine. And hopefully in the next few weeks, we're going to have that completed. So now, based on what we've done for this company, and we use Mirage only for the conversion component of that, they recognize the control that they now have with their endpoints. So they're going to upgrade to the full version of Mirage, which gives them things like full image management, fixing applications, all the things that you hear normally from Mirage. But again, this was a little bit off-center from what Mirage does, been extremely successful, gives you an idea to look for things. Anything from a desktop PC management system, you can at least look at Mirage as part of that solution. I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.